Hi, and thank you all for joining us today. We are broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Hello, everyone. Thank you so very much for joining us today. Today, I'm super excited because I have Michelle Desrochers back on the show, and I absolutely adore her and speaking with her. But again, just to reiterate, welcome to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. And of course, we're broadcasting live on the United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in New Orleans. Please be sure and join us in our chat rooms. We love for you to connect with our guests and, of course, ask any questions, make any comments that you would like. And today we say, welcome, curious minds, to another journey into the explained. Tonight, we're going to be pulling back the curtain a little bit on some of the most unsettling and intriguing aspects of the paranormal. And hopefully, we want to take you beyond sensationalized stories that you've heard on television and the movies. Our topic for this episode is exposing real attachments and unified field of high strangeness. And of course, Michelle is going to guide us through these shadowy realms, and we're incredibly honored to welcome her. She's a true authority in the field. She's a renowned paranormal investigator, an expert on malevolent hauntings, and of course, the host of the Outer Realm podcast, as well as a key figure in Canada's Most Haunted. So Michelle's expertise is going to allow us to take a deep dive into some of this disturbing reality of what happens when something truly attaches to you. And then you ask yourself the big question, like, what is it? Can I get rid of it? Are all these bizarre phenomenon that we hear about, from ghosts to UFOs to cryptids, are they actually connected by a single hidden force? So prepare yourself, because we're going to have a very fun and insightful conversation. Michelle.
Hello. How are you?
Good. I'm so thrilled to have you back.
Oh, thank you. I'll do my best to, get through all of this information. And expert, I think, is a pretty strong word, but thank you. But yeah, I've never really looked at myself that way. It's just, I've had people say that. I'm like, oh, I'll try not to disappoint. No pressure.
No pressure.
So.
But you are an expert. I mean, you are, but that's, I know it makes you uncomfortable.
Yeah, I like to say, I'm versed. There's certainly people out there much more versed than I am, but I'm definitely an experiencer of many different levels of high strangeness, for sure. Paranormal, without a doubt. I mean, that's where my roots began, even throughout my life, and bringing me into the field of research. But it's like everything else. It's a journey of evolution. It's a journey of growth. You just grow through it and you learn things and you go from there. So thank you, Michael. Yeah. So anyway,
that's absolutely true. Oh, yes. Thank you. So you and I have talked about attachments a little bit in the past, and I wanted to take a deeper dive into them because I've just been reading a lot more and hearing people talk about, like, these malevolent attachments that get a hold of people. And it doesn't matter if you're good, bad, or in a different type of person. I think they can get you any which way. Especially when you're going through struggles in your life, you seem to be more susceptible to them, I would think. But I wanted to, get to earthbound spirits, ancestral attachments, negative thought forms too, and then of course malevolent entities with you. But let's start off by give us a definition for those that don't know too much about it. What are they? What are negative attachments?
Well, I mean, I think people have to realize we share space with a whole other world of ethereal beings. We just do. And sometimes we create a lot of this activity. Sometimes we do have, you know, um, intelligent or, non-human uh, entities that will attach themselves. Sometimes human spirits will attach themselves. There's a lot of different things. People automatically assume that attachments comes from the D word, a demon, which of course is a supernatural being that's associated with the fallen angels, evil ones, that non-human entities have not necessarily been a part of our own realm, but you
Mhm.
could dig a lot deeper. You can get into the whole ancient part of everything, and you can get into Gnosticism and archons, and there's so much. I mean, different parts of the world, they're all called different things. You can get into the jinn, you can get into it's a really long list to say what are they exactly. I think they're just, disembodied ethereal being or spirit that attach for whatever reason.
Yeah. Yeah. Is it the same as being possessed, or like how do you differentiate between that and like a walk-in or just an attachment?
I always say luck of the draw, not so much, but as to what you're going to encounter. I mean, you may just, if you're really unlucky, you may just move into a house that has something there. There's a lot of stories out there that embody the whole. I moved into this place, all of a sudden, something started to attach itself, and sometimes it's so slow. You know, you don't even see it happening. For example, there are cases of, family moves into a home, and this is, just as much a human spirit as something more malevolent. And
Mhm.
let's just say that the male of the house, the previous owners, or maybe owners past, had a drinking problem. Well, then, the husband, like the current male of the house, will start, for example, taking up drinking
Yeah.
excessively. Like they start taking on these characteristics. If you have a depressed spirit, you have this very oppressed energy, right? People start to feel depressed or feel this heaviness. So you take on these attributes. What people need to see is that there are things out there who feed off of negative energy. So they're going to do everything to create a negative space so
Right.
that's where they get their strength.
So, do you have to like be in a weakened state to attract that energy, or can it just happen to anyone?
Can happen to anyone. I think if you're in a weakened state, it just makes you more vulnerable. For
Mhm.
example, you and I have talked, on the outer realm, about grieving.
Yes.
People who grieve are in a different state altogether, and sometimes, you just want communication or a sign from your loved one so desperately that you don't always think about where the sign comes from. So there's this encouragement there, and you start to feel really, really connected all of a sudden. And I mean, I can give you a perfect example. I worked with a family quite a few years ago now. This family had everything. They had a business together. They had a big house, in the suburbs. They had,
Mhm.
a son and a daughter. They had everything going for them. And her mom passed away. So time passed and she started acting very erratically. Her mom used to be very proficient in using pendulums. So I guess, the lady, the house started using a pendulum, her mom's pendulum, to try to make a connection. Something came in and she started acting very erratically. She started running laps all over the place, like in circles or like out in the neighborhood. The kicker is that she took off for something like 18 hours with her kids in the car.
Oh,
And yeah, so I was contacted by a family member who started explaining to me what was going on. And I pretty much knew what was going on. And I said, okay, well, I just request that, her husband, who is the authority in the house, invites me to come in. I said I would feel better, knowing that I had like the actual invitation to come in by the person who lives
mhm.
there. So he did. Like when I arrived, he just opened the door and says, please, just come in. And I'll tell you something. I walked in, this woman was facing a wall, almost nose to the wall, except maybe a few inches. She was slurping cereal. It was going all over the place, milk everywhere. And I came right up behind her, and I brought a medium with me because I need to be able to focus on the person. I have my own senses, but it's not, you want that validation. You just, they may pick up on something, maybe you're not, because you're in the moment. She spun around through the bowl, looked at me and went, "Why are you here?" I was like, ooh.
Yeah.
So when you get past the stroke moment, I was like, what? I did not see that coming. And, so it was like a conversation that just went in many different directions. And I completely got her calmed down. But this was a woman who was a health nut, and all of a sudden was chain smoking. And, she asked for the priest to come bless the house. She'd never let him in when he arrived. So I asked for, a psychological or psychiatric assessment from the family doctor. And I needed permission from these people to work with her, which I got. Because, when I'm working with somebody, I have to look at what is their faith, right? They were Catholic.
Right.
So I've got a pretty good idea what the Catholics require to be able to move forward. And so I said, and I requested 2. So they're like, we're a step ahead of you. We already did it, and we got a second opinion, and they got me permission from the doctors to work with her as long as I did not let her go off the meds. So I don't control over what people do, but I will not encourage her. But the meds weren't working. So it took about 3 months because I, aside from, clearing the house, you have to work with the mindset of the individual, to try just to change the way of thinking and empower them and put them back in control, which is what happened, but it took 3 months for that one. So it goes to show she did this through spirit communication. So it usually starts with an invitation, which is, an invite to communicate. But that's where grief can lead you. And I've worked with many people in a grieving state who have brought, pretty terrible things in. It can be that easy.
That's so disheartening to hear because, there's so many psychics too. I guess they know how to protect themselves, because there are ways obviously to do that. But, the everyday man, woman, they don't think of protecting themselves. The same thing with Ouija boards, right? It's, everybody thinks it's a toy, not so much a toy.
No, I think any sort of divination, I think it's really more about the intention. If you're looking to, if you are looking to communicate, whether it's a spirit board, whether it's the Ouija board, whether it's a pendulum, whether it's a ghost box, whether it is, the list goes on, phone app, anything. If the intention is to reach out, even with a voice recorder, every time you do EVPs, that's why they say don't do voice recordings in your home, because you're making this invitation out there to communicate. And there are a lot of mimics out there that will let you believe all kinds of things. And if you are not skilled, or tuned in when something comes in, I've seen some really gifted mediums even get fooled. Like sometimes it's just so real.
Yeah.
So, if you don't use your abilities or you don't have the abilities, I think you just don't know what you're communicating with. It's funny because I think there was a movie that came out a few years back. What was it called? The name is just eluding me. It was so real that I got swamped with messages saying, "Is this a real movie?" And I was like, "No." I said, "It's not a real movie," but it was based on the real steps of a demonic attachment, infestation, possession. And it was crazy. It was so well done that you actually thought this was real. Paranormal Activity is what it was.
Oh, yes.
And it was so well done that when I watched it, and I watched the one with the both, they had a couple of different endings. And I was just like, yeah, you see right there, that's how it happens. It's so easy. You don't see it coming sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's sad too, because I've had a few conversations with Jerry Marzinski, and he's like an authority on schizophrenia. He worked in the
Mhm.
industry for like 30 years.
Yeah.
And he had come to the conclusion that the voices that they're hearing are demonic attachments. They're not, it's
Mhm.
not them. It's coming from
Mhm.
outside of them from different sources. So
Mhm.
it's scary stuff. It's scary stuff.
But
So
it's amazing that he actually acknowledged it.
yes,
I was lucky to meet a couple of different psychologists who acknowledged that, and that's a really big step if you can get to that point. And I'll tell you a story from a schizophrenic
yeah.
individual that I had a conversation with. When he was 18, he said, I was at a hospital and I turned around and I looked, and there was a young boy, probably about 7 or 8, in a bed, and I saw a black shadow coming down over the ceiling and working his way down to his bed. And I basically stood up and I said, "No, come to me instead."
Ooh.
It came to him, and he said, "My whole life changed from that point."
Oh,
So self-sacrifice, but that boy, he helped that boy in the end. So I completely get over it. It's just you have like schizophrenia. There's just something when the mind changes, like people with autism or Downs are highly intuitive. The brain
yeah.
works differently. We look at it, oh, it's like a disability. Well, in this physical world, yes, but boy, they
Right.
are tuned in beyond otherwise.
Yeah. Absolutely. So let's look at some of the history beyond some of these attachments. And I know you're pretty well versed in that.
I'll do my
So
best.
where did like the whole attachment thing originate from? Like when did we start discovering that they were documenting it, whether it was etched in caves or in Egypt? Like where did it originate where we started getting records of this?
I think you can go back to, ancient times. It's not so much that there were records per se. I couldn't tell you when they started actually having records about this, but the ancient beliefs. I mean, maybe we can start there. Ancient beliefs on the demonic, for example, were
Mhm.
mentioned throughout history, whether it was via myths and legends, folklore, different religions throughout the world. They've always represented dark forces. Some of them are said to be shapeshifters and mimics. Like, I think it's all been in the wording. A lot of them, they've always tormented humanity. Demons have always been viewed throughout different cultures, throughout the world. When you start getting into possession, the experience of being possessed, first off, by an entity it's not a common thing. It's actually pretty rare. Attachments are very, very common. Possession, that's a whole other thing.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
culturally speaking, it's they're looked at very different. I'll go over some of the things that I have here, but um, you know, possession, it always seems to be accepted as normal. But I mean, when in that field, but it takes a lot to get to that point.
Yeah.
And affected individual seem to achieve the status of having supernatural powers or healing. The woman I spoke of earlier, who's using the pendulum, she goes, "Well, I'm psychic now." It's like
Oh,
it let her believe, because it kept giving her all of this information that, no, look, you're psychic. It's this, it's that. But I mean, shaman have been dealing with this for like eons. You get back even into the gospels, they describe as some individuals as being possessed because they were blind and mute. So are we looking at actual possessions, because somebody was crippled? Was it a possession or was it something physical? I mean, some of the ancient civilizations like Egypt, China, Babylon, Greece, there was beliefs that anybody exhibiting symptoms of psychopathology, for example, were actually possessed by bad spirits, known, in demonology. But again, what about mental health? What about that? Less
right.
developed areas of the world, his beliefs are very important, because in some cases, the belief in spirit possession, is used to control or coerce individuals. Like it's a rare thing. And they would just say, well, this is a common explanation for mental health. Well, no, it's not. We know that now.
Right.
Right?
Right.
We know that now. But I mean, you're looking at different parts of the world have different types of exorcisms and how they do things. I mean, the Catholics are said to have it right. So,
Yeah. I mean, I think spiritual health and mental health are really one and the same in many
Mm,
ways.
yeah.
And we've all done things in the moment that were out of character for ourselves. Like
Mhm.
we've had maybe outbursts that were not like after you've had an outburst, you'd say, where did that come from?
Mhm.
So do you think these things could just be something trying to attach itself or attacking you that would rile that up inside?
I think there are a lot of things out there that just lay in wait. I mean, you
Yeah.
get back to ancient times, I mean, this stuff did happen. I just don't know how much you actually heard about it. Again, I'm not a complete authority on anything, but I do try to do my research. I mean, even the word demon comes from, the ancient Greeks, which still meant
Yeah.
spirit. So really, again, like what level are we at? But I think that I've know that I've worked with people through the years who, for example, they go to a concert. She's
Hmm.
just going out for a good time, just to have a concert, and they come back with something.
Yeah.
Like
Makes sense too.
yeah, there are things that they have the ability. They're not bound to this physical.
Mm,
The idea is when they attach to a physical or possess it, the end game is always a prize, which is soul energy, its essence. I've come across, like through the decades, honestly, I've come across spirits who still have the attachment. I've had people say to me, well, I'll just kill myself and that'll solve the problem. Says, you think? I'm like, no, no, it doesn't.
right.
No, it doesn't. I says, that's your friend for like eternity after
Oh,
that.
jeez.
Unless somebody, no, we've seen people who have come across and have had attachments. And in passing, the attachment's still there. It's still walking around, but this time you could see. So unless somebody comes along and removes that attachment, like I mean, I've talked to spirits and I'm like, why are you still here? Your dad's right there, and they're like, he won't let me. And all of a sudden, you hear this guttural
Oh,
growl, and you look behind
yeah.
him, and there's just like
Yeah.
it's like, oh, I see, okay. So I guess it's a matter of, like if you look about people who conjure these things, I can never understand it.
Yeah.
Why you would want to conjure such a powerful being. People seem to be under this illusion that they can control these beings. I'm your master. I conjured
Right.
you.
Well, we've
It's
seen that
like,
on
right.
movies, right?
Okay.
Yeah, we've seen that in movies too.
Yeah.
We have a quick question.
Sure, sure.
Sparky's Paranormal and Outdoor wants to know possession or effects on body or mind. What do you think is the defining factor?
Well, I mean, okay, full possession happens even with attachments. The idea is the idea again, it's soul energy. So the key is keep you in a horrific state of mind. Addictions,
Yeah.
anxiety, depression. You fall hard enough, especially through addiction, because I worked with people who've been down that road. You abuse yourself, you abuse your body. Full blown possession. I don't know. Do I think that your head's going to crank around the other way? No, no, I don't. But again, there are people in other parts of the world who swear they've seen things like this. I can only speak for myself. I've never seen anything like that, but I've seen some people like this woman again that we spoke about. She was a health nut. She went and worked out every single day. Within 3 months, she was down to under 100 pounds, chain smoking, barely eating, and looked like a skeleton with skin. Right. So
And
that
this
is
is
the
all
key.
from a pendulum. She was, oh my
Thinking
word.
she was communicating with her mother.
Yeah.
So you see, I think that's part of the problem is it's why mindset is so important. And it's why sometimes clearings don't work. I mean, we've helped people who have had alleged exorcisms that did not work. Because even if you look at the story, of the young man that the story The Exorcist is based on,
Yeah.
it took weeks and weeks
Oh
of
yeah.
having the rites done every day, but it's not full on. You may only get the rites an hour a day, half an hour, but eventually they got it. The thing is, it's being consistent, and it's changing how the individual thinks here. You can get a clearing, for example, and you may feel great. But if you're sitting there and you keep fearing that it's going to keep happening, it's almost like there's a lot to the saying, what you put out there comes back. Like fear has a way of, it's like you're keeping your foot in the door. You
Yeah.
have to continuously change your vibration. I'll tell people, laugh, dance, watch funny movie, open the windows, get some
Right,
fresh air, hug a tree, like
yeah.
change what's up here. Because if you don't, you're going to be just sitting there waiting. And if you can believe it, I've had people say to me, well, I miss that presence in my life that was
Oh
always there. I'm like, why? I can't help you with that.
yeah,
And they
exactly.
but they go back with a whole different attachment. It
So
happens.
he's also asking, would you say some are like leeches, I guess, even in the afterlife, that they attach to your energy? Is that what they're doing? They're attaching to your.
Yeah, it's the energy is like the prize, because it's the part of us that moves on from this physical place. Unfortunately, the meat suit is in the way. So,
Right.
but as long as we exist here, life will be hard. If you notice, for example, I'll give you an example of just without putting aside attachments altogether, but to give you an idea how energy works. You
Mm-hmm.
come home after a hard day, get into a few words with the other half, blah, all this energy going out into the environment, and you leave the room. You come back a couple of hours later, you're feeling pretty good, but
Yeah.
you come back, you're calm, and you walk into that space and you start to feel foul. And you wonder why you're feeling foul. This is why so many people will continue to cleanse their homes even after I've worked with them. If I feel the house is off, I always hit it up. I'll just give it a hit of light, but I'm an energy worker. It's a little bit easier. But for those, some people like sage. They'll sage the house. Some people like the patchouli. They'll sage and patchouli the house. It's
Right.
more about, in my opinion, not so much what you're using, but it's behind the strength of behind the intention, the
Yes.
power behind the words. That's where it comes from. So, that's what you have to concentrate on. It's really simple basics. Positive vibration starves them, negative vibrations attracts them and
Yeah.
feeds them. Why do
Yeah.
you think the world is in the state that it's in? It's a free for all right now.
Yeah. It really
I'm
is.
not saying that's the cause, but I'm just saying if there's
Yeah.
any truth, there's all of these dark energies, human or non-human, and this is what's keeping them going. How much do you think is going
Yeah.
on? Throw in the frequencies and vibrations that have been a part of our world for the last 100 years. Start just factoring in how it affects us and our mindset.
Yeah. They love that loosh. They get. And you're right. The world is in such a state right now. There's all
Hmm.
this political arguing going on and wars at every corner of the globe. So yeah, I mean,
Hmm.
and it's interesting how it's happening at the same time.
Isn't it?
Right? It's very interesting. And then you've got so millions and millions of people across the globe that are having awakenings and becoming more enlightened. So it's like this battle of dark and light, right?
I think that's exactly what's happening. I think we have this incredible movement going on where people are calling it an awakening. And I mean, I know things have to get worse before they get better, but there is an awakening going on. I know because again, I do energy work with people and we look at what's going on in the collective consciousness. We try to put out really positive things,
Mm,
every time we work. Like if just imagine if one person, if each one of us, or at least half of us on
mhm.
this planet put out positive intentions every single day, even just one time a day. Oh my God, I don't think we would quite be in the state that we're in because it is truly a collective consciousness.
Yes,
We
absolutely.
are all connected and it makes such a difference. But where there's this elevation, you have things fighting back as well. And you really notice it when they do. We were talking today, Wayne and I, and he said, he goes, I don't know why I feel so like unmotivated today. And I'm like, I don't know. I kind of feel the same thing, but it says I've got a couple of shows today, so I'm good. I can be really laid back. And then a friend of his messages from like the other side of the country and goes, I just cannot be motivated today. I'm like,
Oh,
it's yeah. So
it's
yeah. So it's like, what are these things just going off? Like, what is that? Really?
yeah.
So,
I think a lot of that is the global energy, and it just can't help but affect us. Well, I even know, like, if when I get up in the morning, if there's awful negative news, it immediately affects me, and I have to shut it off and put something else on. I can't. It affects all of us.
mhm,
It's
it
awful,
does.
all that negative energy.
Mm-hmm.
So, so Michelle, would you say that even if they sage your lemongrass, etc., their home, if the people living in that home have an anger in the heart or gossiping type of mind, it will never be clean?
Um, I think that I like to say 50-50 because all I could say is this. I've spent 2 decades working with people from all walks of life. I've worked with thousands of people. And I have primarily worked in one area, which have been attachments or malevolent hauntings, because I experienced that.
Yeah.
And it was long before the internet, so I'm aging myself a bit, but it was before the internet. So I had to work on myself, my mindset. I had to go to the library. I had to look at things just to help me get an understanding of what I was dealing with. And I can only speak from my own experiences, but it was enough that when I started helping other people, I drew from my experiences and what helped me.
Mm.
And people I work with will sometimes giggle at me because, I'll have something. It always seems though that, for example, when I'm going to a home where there's an attachment present or something's inhabiting the space, that they seem to know. They know it, because I have people from the home talking to me about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I've had things come into my space. I've been growled at, and I've just taught myself to acknowledgement is empowerment. There's one time I come in and I hear this knocking. This guy was a knocker. So he would knock on my bedside table. And I walk out of my ensuite, grab my purse, and all I said was, I'll see you in an hour, mister. And I kept going. I shut the door. And I'm like, but I've trained myself to do that. And it's like, it's not that you don't feel the fear or the anxiety, but I just won't give it to this
Give
thing,
it to them. Right. Right. Right.
and I've known for things like that. People just laugh at me because I'll be on site somewhere, and people will hear this big guttural growl. I mean, they're loud. You could hear them. And I'm just like, yeah, 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 yeah. I know, and I move on. I don't acknowledge it more than yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've got voice recordings. I'm called every name in the bloody book.
Mm.
Or you'll hear something come through one of the devices and, I'm being called, the 4-letter word with the big C. And I'm like, I know, I know, I know, but it's not your lucky day then. you know, so it's sassy in a way, but at least I'm not sitting there shaking. I'm empowering myself to deal with it the way that has always worked for me and still works for me.
Did you ever find yourself bringing anything home and had to deal with it?
Inadvertently. Yeah. I mean, we don't ever plan on that, obviously. I'm pretty grounded. I've always been pretty grounded. I had something like, not that I've ever been cocky, but I've been humbled, because you have to have a lot of respect to deal with these things. And I had a family member affected by something that came in. And that was a humbling experience, having to deal with that. Makes you realize that you're not untouchable. And I've worked pretty closely with people with these attachments where, I've been touched, I've been growled at, I've never been scratched or pushed or anything like that. But sometimes it can be pretty frightening. I've had things come in, not necessarily from any specific location I've been at. I mean, I think I've told the story where I was woken one night. My eyes just popped open and I knew something had come in. And I
Mm.
walked downstairs and I went into the den and there was this big leather, chair in the corner. And I could see a form. When you hear the term darker than dark,
Yeah.
it really is a thing because
Yeah.
in this darkness, I could see this form. So I
Hmm.
sat on the sofa and I could hear this. It's like that. And I remember just sitting there looking at it going, huh. That's all I said. I went, huh. So I got up, I walked upstairs and I said, don't let the door hit you on the way out.
Oh, jeez.
No, when I say acknowledgement is empowerment, I take it pretty
Yeah.
literal. And all of a sudden I heard this sound like it shot out. It was almost like a huge popping sound, like a boom, just like that. Like if I could have seen the ripple, sure it would have been like it was a
Yeah.
very different experience. I'd never heard it before. But my thought was get back upstairs, stand at the top of the stairs initially, because I'm going to protect my family the best that I can. At
Mm.
that point, everybody's up on the second level. And I just sat there and I turned around and I looked back and then the house felt good. And I just cleared the house, and that was it. And
How did you walk up those stairs? Were you running up?
no,
Or
no,
no?
that's the mindset part. No,
Yeah.
no, I just sauntered my silly rear end up there and just
Wow.
because that falls under the mindset of holding your ground in a respectful way. I was just kind of like, no, don't think I didn't feel it inside. I'm thinking, damn,
Yeah.
like I don't know how big and ugly this thing is. I just know I know it's big because I could see its outline, but this big, it's like, oh,
Oh, that growling thing
dang it.
scares the daylights out of me. I mean, I've had
Yeah.
experiences where I'd be walking up the stairs and I felt something behind me and I would bolt like at first.
Yeah.
But then, like every time I would feel that, I just kind of ran less. But you're right, your heart's pounding and you want to run.
That
But
was me at 15.
wow.
I had my room in the basement, and of course, something would follow. I had like there was something I'd come in at some point. Yeah, I have to thank my aunt. When people say Ouija boards aren't problematic, I'll tell you, I had an aunt. We were only 10 years apart, so she was kind of the cool aunt. She shows up with a Ouija board
Yeah.
one day, and she says, "Oh," starts playing with it, and it was a terrifying experience for her. She's had experiences before. She should have known better. But regardless, something came in at that point. So that was my thing. And I mean, right up until I was like, like bar age, I'd come in, being like 19, and I could feel something like race to the door. I closed the door, and one night something went boom into
Oh,
the door. I'm like, ha! Yeah, I win. But it was just I was a little cockier then, but I wasn't a researcher. I mean, I was just like holding my ground
yeah,
more
yeah.
than anything.
That's such a good way to put it, to hold your ground.
Yeah. Yeah. So it could be pretty scary, but I do believe the key to a lot of it is mindset.
Yeah, Heidi just said facing her fears is very empowering, and that's
Yeah.
true.
Hmm.
That's so true. Difficult to do, but
It is because everything inside you is
yeah.
sort of screaming,
Well, yeah,
and
fight or flight kicks in and you just want to bolt.
Mhm.
And we were talking about wild animals before, and like I said, when I saw that wolf outside my house, I wasn't going to be sauntering back inside at a slow pace. I grabbed my dog and ran for hell. But
Yeah.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is mindset.
For me, it has always been key. Paranormal Nightmare. Yeah, that's the one. That's the only time I've ever told that story in its entirety. The only
Wow.
time. That's the only show you'll ever see the full story. And even now, I question so much of it because it's that journey of evolution.
Hmm.
They wanted my story as I lived it at that time, but your journey of evolution and growth And I started realizing that I was also an ET experiencer. And I started to question how much, how intertwined they were. Oh, yeah. Thank God it never came that close. But the
Yeah.
stroke out a few times, I was like, you feel
What
it.
frightens you more, if not, and I guess the word frighten's not appropriate, but what concerns you more, an attachment or an ET visiting you in your bedroom at night?
Wow, that's a really good question. Because you know what? I with the attachment, I could always feel it. I could always sense, like I said, like that night, my eyes popped open. I knew something had come in. But I also think part of it may have been conditioning. I was so
Yeah,
conditioned to what they felt like, like I could go to any different location. And I always said that I could tune in to the point where if I felt what it felt like, I would always remember it.
yeah,
And for the most part, I did. If something came in from a different location, I would remember it. But they're not fun. But I mean, I've turned down doing TV series because they're just like, okay, we just do something like the scare of your night. I'm going. I don't have a scare of my night. I'm pretty
yeah.
calm actually with everything. They're like, well, nothing scares you. I'm like, not in the way you think. So I I a lot of people are like, why don't we see you on these new shows? This is because they want me in a fear position, and I'm just not in
Right.
a fear position. I'm not
Exactly.
just going to make it up, But
Yeah.
I think ET is a little bit different. That's where my comfort zone was a little off because they don't feel the same, even though there's many similarities between ET and the paranormal crossover phenomenon for sure. Um, but I mean, I just find I guess they're all kind of sneaky. I mean, I've had like hands on my head. I wake up and I'm
Mm.
just like, and again, I'm just, touch me, I'll break your arm because I don't know what I'm dealing with right there. That's exactly what I said because I didn't know what I was dealing with. I had not felt that before. So I don't know, is it like a spirit touching me or no, a spirit wouldn't. I mean, the spirits of our house are really, really kind. So I knew they wouldn't disturb like that. So I'm thinking, something's actually touching me that shouldn't be touching me. So then there was the first time like where I wasn't sleeping and I saw a gray in the house, and I was kind of like, "Oh, nope."
Yeah.
I rolled over, and people laugh at me. They're just like, "Why you just say that?" Well, because I didn't know what else to say. I'd never experienced that. It's just no. That was my innards saying, "No, I'm not doing it." And I rolled over, and in my head going, "Go away, go away, go away." But you know what?
Did
It
it
was
go
very
away?
respectful. It did. Yeah, it
Yeah.
went away. So, I don't know, like, I don't know what bothers me more. I don't like the intrusion of either of them.
Yeah, that's so well said. Because
Yeah.
even if not all ET are friendly and
No.
benevolent either, but
Yeah.
and who knows if they would care if you were scared or not, or if
Mm.
you know if you were
Yeah.
acting like like had that attitude towards them, like get out of my house. Maybe they wouldn't give a crap either
Yeah.
way. But you're right. It is an invasion in any way you look at it.
It's an intrusion if they have to be sneaky. I've
Yeah.
always said it, and I've come to learn, at least in some experiences, because you know what? I don't know that I haven't been grabbed by someone I shouldn't have. I don't know. I don't have those recollections. So I can tell you anything I have any little semblance of recollection of, it's not been bad. They've been more respectful.
Well, that's
Like I
good.
said, we had a part of our house where, we didn't always use the upstairs. It's a big house at the manor, and we just started seeing them a little bit more. And we just stopped using the upstairs because we weren't using it. So it's like, whatever. But you can
Let
hear
them
them.
have it. Yeah.
You kind of hear this little stomping around only at certain times though. But they came with a lot of other things. They weren't a typical like the lady of the house. We had a spirit there, and she was very kind. We knew it wasn't her because when you were in bed, she's just at that time never even entertained. She was a visitation spirit. She wasn't a grounded
Right.
spirit.
Right.
So you didn't have that kind of stuff at that time. I cleared the house of all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that's
I mean,
it.
I don't like that. See, when things are touching you, like Heidi said, tapping, your feet and stuff. I mean, are they just trying to get your attention, Michelle, when they do that with the touching? Like, because I would imagine it would take so much energy for them to do that, to be able to touch and move things.
I guess it depends how long they've been passed. I mean, when my mom passed, she had promised my sister, "I'll flicker the lights because it's easy, right?" But I mean, we came from that sort of family. Like my
Yeah.
grandfather was really active like that. My uncle, they came through. They just like and when you work energy, like it's easy to continue that on into
Mhm.
the afterlife. So she started doing that with me almost instantly, like within days. And I'm at one point, I'm like, I'm in the washroom, I'm walking to the washroom, kind of like, this can be very awkward, and all the lights just stopped. Thank you. Like it was weird. It
Yeah.
was weird. So I think, if you're trying to, it's like the movie Ghost, where Patrick Swayze is trying to move the penny on the
Exactly.
table. I think it's if you understand how energy works, it's easier. But I imagine over time, you kind of like, I hate to use the word fall into it, but I'm sure spirits will have their experiences. And I think if you're grounded, it might be more of a different situation than if you're already ascended and you already have everything intact. If that makes sense, you're ascended, so you know how to work your energy. You don't have the baggage that holds you back.
That makes so much sense. What bothers me too are ancestral attachments, because some believe that, like, negative patterns, traumas, unresolved family problems, things like that, that they can attach to descendants. And that kind of disturbs me.
Hmm.
It's like, oh, I
And
didn't ask.
karma,
Yeah, right.
karmic stuff. Yeah.
Have you dealt with a lot of that too, with ancestral attachments? Or
Well, I could tell you that, this specific attachment that had attached itself to me, just through dealing with mediums in later life, I was able to get a lot more clarity on what I was dealing with. And it was definitely ancestral. And as I learned more and more about my ancestry, it all fit and I understood it, but I think, I mean, when it comes to energy, let's face it, you're dealing DNA. I
mm,
had two grandfathers in a war. I had ancestors who were knights, you know. So I come across with a warrior type aggressive spirit. And I really am a fighter. Like I definitely will. And clearly, doesn't matter what I can see you or not. I'm going to give it my best go.
yeah, of course.
But I think we take along the good traits, but we get the fears for sure. If there's an attachment somewhere in there, for sure it's going to travel in through time. I mean, it's just it's the energy. I don't even talk about reincarnation. Like we just don't know how it all works. We can speculate all that we want, but time is irrelevant to a lot
Yeah,
of these beings. So
yes.
it doesn't make a difference. They can wait you out.
Yeah, I wonder if they're harder to get rid of too, the ancestral ones.
I don't know. I think energy is energy, to be
Mm,
honest. I've had people message me again with curses. I've been cursed, I've been hexed. Can you remove it? I've had, people throw psychic energy at me and I've spun it around and poof, right back.
yeah.
And I've had people say, "Oh, it's interesting when somebody messages you and goes, oh, yeah, well, this has been happening to me." Going, "Ah, has it?" It's like, okay, because sometimes, the people that it happens with. But I think a lot of it, again, goes with intention or with your mind. Do you believe that you have been cursed? Do you believe when somebody says, I curse you and this and that?
Oh, yeah.
Um, I think some of it is that, and some of it is just having a reversal of energy done, a sort of return to sender thing.
Oh, I love that concept,
Yeah,
because you're
you
not
know,
doing harm. You're just flipping it back at them,
It's just their own energy that you're working with,
Right.
and it makes a really big difference. I mean, there are some true curses out there. I always look at, the curse of Jacques de Molay while he's burning on the stake and cursed the Pope at the time, and who was gone in less than a year, and the king, he said, your entire line will be gone. And I think it was within like a couple of 300 years, it was gone, completely wiped out. Wiped
Y-
out.
How much of that do you think is self-fulfilling prophecy? Like you said, you hear it, you believe it, and you make it happen.
Well, I mean, some of these things were accidents that were happening to them. So it's sort of like, wow, illness. I think with illness, it's very possible because people have the power to will themselves into some pretty terrible states. So I think we have to look at a lot of different aspects. We also have to look at the fact that we're very powerful as individuals. You look at psychokinesis and telekinesis, these are real things.
Exactly. They are.
Projection of energy. I mean, there are poltergeist cases that are centuries old, and that all started with a projection of energy from somewhere. And they grow, they amass, the energy gets stronger and stronger.
Yeah.
But I mean, this is very common with, teenagers and women
Oh,
going
gosh,
through
puberty
women
and
going through menopause.
yeah, oh
We
boy.
we can throw energy like nobody's business.
Oh,
you know.
you better believe it.
Oh yeah.
You better believe it. It's funny too, because when you think about like negative thoughts and negative thought form, right?
Mhm.
That these are like energetic constructs and we create them.
Mhm.
So emotions like fear, anger, despair, you name it, right?
Yeah. Mhm.
That they can, that energy, I fully believe, can attach to an individual. So,
Mhm.
like, you're in an argument with someone and you're spewing all this toxicity and hate. And even after you make up, there's still, you can feel the vibe.
Mhm.
Did you ever have like an argument with somebody and you make up, but yet there's still like this vibe
Tension.
of,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I think it's that energy. I really do.
I don't think everybody's energy can jive, together. We
Right.
like to think that, we can, but it's like taking two magnets. Sometimes energies just are not meant to jive. And this happens in friendships and in relationships, or sometimes you just meet somebody, you just don't like them.
Absolutely.
No matter what, your energies just do not sync. You just cannot find a compatible ground anywhere. And this happens.
That's so interesting to think of it as not so much a personality thing, but more of an energy thing.
Mhm.
Like you said, two magnets that are just
Yep.
polar opposites of each
It's
other.
true. It's true, and it happens all the time. When they say opposites attract, you kinda go, "Well, not in all cases."
Right, right.
Like
Not always.
mhm,
Yeah, everything is frequency, vibration, it does
mhm,
need to align. Yeah.
mhm,
And you could be so different from like your husband in so many ways, but yet there's this energy that you're on the same level with,
mhm,
and that's good enough, even though
mhm,
there's so many differences.
mhm. It's all about frequency and vibration, and that's something that, again, you think you know everything, and you realize how connected everything is. I mean,
Absolutely.
everything. This whole level of high strangeness. I mean,
Oh, yeah.
The the example I use, with that is when I was in Egypt many years ago now, but, I was able to I'm a good tipper, so sometimes I get little perks. So, I'm in the Great Pyramid of Giza, and at the time, it's not like today we have all these private tours going out with of enlightenment and things like that. Back then, there wasn't a lot of that, if any, that I was aware of. So anyway, I was in Egypt because I was touring different parts of Europe and thought I would just shoot down there for a few days, which I did. So I tipped, and the guy just cleared out the pyramid for me and let me, just spend
Wow.
some time. Yeah, it was really cool. And he said, "Okay, I've got to open up now." I got half an hour, but I was grateful for it. And then he sent me in this other area where I literally had to go down on my belly, and getting into this little space. It was so tight. And when I came up in this chamber, I saw this man. And it looked, I mean, he looked like somebody who would have worked on the pyramids, like he just I don't know, was it an older time Egyptian? That's all that was what went through my head at the time. It's like, oh God, you really are like an old dude, like, probably worked on it. So I looked at him and I went because I'm showing him, I'm going like this, like, look at me, how I'm dressed. And he looks at himself and I'm going like, it shows you that there's a universal language when you speak telepathically, right? And I'm
Yes.
going like, what happened? And he went like this, which tells me perhaps that he had fallen. Right,
Oh,
and I'm like, "And okay," and I said, "So, you're dead?" And he looked at me and he goes, "You're dead."
what?
I sat there and I went, "Maybe?" Like, because I mean, we're alive in this realm, but I don't freaking know.
Right.
Did I step into a different dimension in a moment? Like, I wasn't gonna
Hey,
discount what he said. He goes, "You're dead." I'm like, "Okay." I turned around and scrolled back up my little thing, and that
oh
was the end of
my
that, yeah.
goodness.
But I wasn't into the paranormal then, like, I wasn't into the research, or I would have stuck around and had a whole different kind of conversation. I'm on vacation, and this was probably about, 10 years pre, investigator me.
Oh, wow.
So I had no clue. I would have had if that happened to me now, it'd be a whole other
Yeah,
conversation
yeah.
than what I had then. I just knew to be respectful because I was raised that way. I come from a family of seers, right? So you just be respectful. It's like, okay, maybe it is me. Turn around, back up I go.
Yeah. When you
I
got
know.
out, make sure.
I know. It's
That's
like, bye-bye.
yeah,
You
exactly.
know? Yeah. So, but he knew he had fallen. But beyond that, I was like, all right.
That is so cool.
It was different, but I just wasn't versed enough to really get the concept of this incredible experience I was given. Yeah, isn't it great? Yeah. I kind of wonder if he's still around though, if other people have experienced him in just different levels, because there are so many different tours
Yeah.
that take place now and so many other discoveries and so on. So, but to explain it, and everything they found under the Great Pyramid in the last 6 months, be very energized, you know.
Yeah.
So
Did you hear anything else about that? Are they doing any research?
apparently they've just expanded, and apparently they think now that it may be under all of the pyramids up there, like on
I
Giza
heard that
Plateau.
too.
So
Are
yeah.
they gonna dig? Did you hear anything? Like, are they doing any digging or?
Um, no, I've caught little snippets, I guess, where they're still talking more about the function and things like that. So they're not recanting it, which is interesting. When you go back to the 90s, when there was an interview with Dr. Zayawas, and he'd already said that there was all kinds of stuff in tunnels under there. So,
Oh
you
yeah.
know, yeah. So I don't think they're going to recant that now, but they're giving us tidbits, which is it's better than nothing, I suppose.
Jeez, it's just like the UFO disclosure. You get little tidbits of information coming from
Mhm.
wherever source, and it's so frustrating.
I think people in general are more about they're the disclosers more than what we're going to ever get from our powers that be, because I mean you got cell phones, you have experiencers, they're coming out of it, they're talking about it. And I think that's what needs to happen. I think it's as close as you're going to get.
Yeah. So before we get into like the unified theory of high strangeness, what do you think a person can do for themselves without having to reach out to somebody that does energy work to get rid of an attachment? Like, what if somebody knows that something's not right? They feel it, they're
Mm.
acting differently, but don't want to necessarily reach out to anybody. Maybe it's not that bad. They feel they can handle it themselves. What would you do? Like, what steps would you take?
Well, first off, people don't always want to share when something
Right.
is going on. Some people are very private. I've worked with people who are very much one investigator after another because they just want the experience. They want to see the evidence, things like that. But I mean, people who are really in a bad way, often enough, it's interesting because sometimes one member of the family will feel something and For example, the other spouse won't ever experience anything. So it
Right.
goes to show how you can just shut some things off, or
Absolutely.
it could just be the energy is focusing on one person. But I think what you have to start off with right off the bat, if you can, is like I tell people, when I
Mm.
say acknowledgement is empowerment, I mean when you're vocalizing, don't go in there and this is my house, and you have that right. But if you're going to get aggressive, that's what it wants you to do. It feeds off that
Yeah.
anger, rage, fear, addiction, depression, anxiety. I mean, anything that puts you in an altered state, addictions. I mean, people have become addicted to things who didn't have addictions before.
Oh, yeah. And you know what's bad? A lot of those paranormal TV shows, which you know very well about, they antagonize the spirit to get jump scares and ratings, and then they teach that to the general public too, which is awful.
It is. It is. I mean, I used to even just argue with, I mean, I've worked with great producers, but one of the reasons I stopped filming was because of the fact that not everything is a demon. And I'll give you 5 or 6 answers to every question you have, but there's always one that they go to, but demon sounds a lot better in the ratings than
Oh, yeah.
psychokinesis or projection of energy or
Right.
things of that nature. So I get it. I don't have creative control. I don't really get to say what goes, sort of thing. But I think that we're in an age, we have been for the last at least 2 decades, where paranormal shows rule right now. They still do. And I think if you had a show that just concentrated on real logistics, it may not be as exciting, if you're factoring in the long journey of working with some people who are in some really bad places. But if you find that you're in a really bad place, there are different things you can do. People seem to, in my experience, people seem to need to be proactive. So, how did I get people to be proactive? Well, first off, I was on call 24/7 at the time. I would get calls at 2, 3, 4 in the morning sometimes because the activity would be amping up, or their inner fear would be amping up, and which would attract something to come in. So I was always on call. And I would say, okay, people think they could sage the house one time and it's done. No, I would have people use whatever it is that felt that it empowered them, whether patchouli, sage, frankincense, myrrh, whatever. Some people would mix things. I would say, okay, either do this or get yourself some white candles, start burning it, put some little drops of whatever of these oils that you like. I would give them different options, but they needed to feel like they were being proactive. But saging, for example, 3 times a day at least, or whenever they felt on edge. And as time went on, they were feeling empowered by doing it because their intention was strong.
Yeah.
Like they're doing this, they're being proactive. This is my house. A lot of
Yeah.
times they didn't even acknowledge. I mean, I've had people say that, things would get toppled over while they were doing it. I said, don't react. Don't react to any of it. Just if it falls, it falls, unless someone in the house is getting hurt. Then just,
Yeah.
do what you need to do and watch out for the pets. And I'll get to pets in a moment as well. But the idea was over time, the activity would lessen and lessen. Therefore, we could scale back how many times that they were doing it. And it would get to a point where I would always say, try to at least do it once a week. But they felt good about having the cleansing. And then they started feeling better in general. So they just would keep it up. But here's what people don't realize about pets. And whenever we would clear homes, we would also ground
Mhm.
energy for the pets and things like that, because they're silent. A pet cannot tell you if they're being attacked. They can't tell you if there's something that's stuck to them. They can't tell you if something's wrong. And I will often say to people, you think you have an issue, follow your pet's lead. But I've had people message me saying, my pet is acting this way or this way. And, I mean, people lose animals when they have a serious attachment. The animals have been possessed just as easily as people can be. We're a better place for an attachment or something to hide than in the one physical being in the home that can't speak.
Oh, jeez.
It happens all the time. It happens all the time.
Yeah. And animals are so much more intuitive by nature than we are. So,
But they can't speak. So if
right,
something happens, then what do they do? It's not always about the people. It's the silent ones, and kids are really easy to scare, and they're easy to trick. I've worked with several children through the years who have inadvertently invited things in because they think they're dealing with an imaginary friend because there's this new little boy that comes in. And I think where sometimes we as parents go wrong is we make fun of kids saying, don't be silly. There's no such thing as an imaginary friend. You're being stupid, blah, 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 blah. So the child is being belittled and made to feel foolish because he's being honest, like he's seeing something, because kids are so
right,
intuitive and he does not have the support of the parent. And you see, when that happens, all of a sudden this being is going, ah,
right, right.
now I've got it. Right. So pay attention. Kids could be teller of tall tales for sure. But when you start seeing them, they're not always comfortable. When these things amp up, you see them start to react. And I've seen kids, I saw one little guy get totally possessed. And it's not what people think. Sometimes they just fall into really deep sleeps. And I've encountered that a few times, but I've seen it twice with a child. He was 4, and I got a call, and the mom basically said, like, I can't wake him up, not for anything. And
Oh,
this kid wakes up like this.
yeah.
So I went in, and luckily it was a situation where they weren't very far from me at the time. So I did some energy work, and I could put my hands over top of this kid and feel this vibration coming from him. So I was able to just draw on that, and telepathically, I just laid down the law. I'm just like, you're coming out. That's it. So anyway, literally, as soon as I got there and started working over, the upper part of his body, his eyes opened. I could feel a release. And he just looked at me. He said, "Hi, Michelle." He goes, "Why are you here?" And I just said, because I was close by and I just wanted to come and get a hug. And he said, "Oh, okay." And he gave me a big hug. And mom was just like, oh, like literally, I had him awake within like 5 minutes without even touching him, without saying a word. I just kind of went in very, very quietly with mom, and then just kind of went over him. It's like, okay, yeah. She goes, "It's never happened before." It never happens again after that either. But it goes to show you, we have to be very attentive and listen to your kids when they speak to you. Watch them, if anything. Don't lead them when you ask questions, but just watch. Because believe me, it does amp up over time, and it gets crazy.
Yeah, I've heard a few disturbing things. There was one child about 7, and when I was confronted with this, it freaked me out because she kept saying that there was a devil in her room, and he kept
Mm,
telling her to do bad things.
yeah, yeah,
And I said to the parents, like, you need to take that seriously. Like, I'm not saying panic or freak out, but
no.
like,
But it happens
yeah,
more times than
yeah,
you would think. It happens because it's almost like, people don't take the kids seriously. And there are things out there that know this. They know which people that would be an easy mark. And when it happens to you, it's like you have a bullseye on your back. It really does. You just seem to you always have to be diligent,
yeah.
in your life, because it's almost like they just know. So,
It's kind of scary to be vulnerable. It's like, I don't know. It disturbs, like, the whole attachment thing
mm,
disturbs me on so many levels because it's a sense of vulnerability that's kind of like out of our realm of control in a way.
mhm,
You could protect yourself from a lot of earthly stuff,
that's
going
true.
on but you can't really
Mhm.
protect yourself or really know what's going on in the spiritual realm.
No, and this happens. It happens a lot. It's just, I'll talk to people and it takes a while. Though I'll have a woman say to me, "Well, it took me a while for my husband to agree to this because he couldn't get his head around it." And
Yeah.
he said, he goes, "It's because I'm supposed to be able to protect my family. And by relinquishing that and bringing you in, or it's admitting to myself that I
Sure.
can't do the job. And I'm just like, because when I go in to see somebody, I'll say, I don't go in saying, "Oh, you're lucky I'm here." I don't make people feel that way. I will usually sit down with them and say, "Thank you for entrusting yourself and your family to me. Let me take the weight for a while, and
Yeah, yeah.
just let me do this. I will try to educate you the best as I can as we go along." And I've had people, because at one time I had like a good year and a half, 2-year waiting list for me to physically go
Wow.
places, because these situations take a long time. Because I know it's not just clearing the house, it's not just that. Sometimes you're working with people for 3 months. I think 3 months was my shortest. I've had people where it's been like a year and a half. I try not to do more than 2 at a time because I want to be able to be more effective. It's
Sure.
important to me that people, have an understanding of what's going on, because I'm gonna
Yes.
be dead one day, and I want people to not have to, I want people to be able to take care of themselves. So I've had people where I've worked with remotely who have said, I've taught them, and they, over the phone at the time, or the computer, and by the time I'm free, they're like, "No, everything you taught us, we did it. We're good.
Yeah.
Thank you. That's perfect. That's all I want."
Yeah. And then we're always relying on things like crosses and oils and sage and stuff. And then, I've heard Nathaniel Gillis say,
Yeah.
good luck with that stuff, because it's not going to, your cross is not going to protect you. And that
Yeah.
is even like more upsetting to hear that.
Yeah.
But we think it does. We believe, and that empowers us, right?
But that's the key, is whatever it takes to empower you.
Yeah.
People tend to lose their faith when things happen, because, I mean, you have people who go the other way, but then you have people who are like, "How can you let this happen to us? How, we're
Yeah.
faithful. How is this happening to us?" They don't understand, so they get angry, and they lash out, and again, that's what these things want. So when this happens, you know, I try to lean on whatever it is that
Mm,
gives them faith. And if it's a cross, again, it's that intention when you put it out there.
right.
It's I really believe it's about intention, and the power that you put behind everything that you're doing is what helps to make it work. It's just taking back your space, you
Yeah.
know.
Absolutely.
As Wayne makes mention of a case, that I hate to use the word case, but of a situation, a family we worked with. When we went into this home, I was asked by a colleague if I would take this on, and I said yes, no problem. Anyway, it was really bad. This place had this attachment. These people moved into an attachment, and the people who lived there before, the man had pushed his wife, or in a rage, and she cracked her head
Oh,
on
good.
something, and she bled out. Yeah, she passed away. This guy, I tried to find out even where he was, um, but I couldn't get any information. I had a friend in law enforcement. Says, "Can you find out where this person is?" Because the husband had no recollection of anything he had done. And I never would have thought twice about it, except for the fact that when I worked with this family, the husband had done the exact same thing to her, only
Oh,
she didn't get her head knocked. And they sent me recordings of growling things, and her little boy could see it. And I see a video, and he's playing, and there's something growling, going "Rah, rah, rah," the whole time, like at this
what's
child.
wrong with these entities? Do
Oh,
they just
it's
scare us? Like, what is up
for
with that?
sure, for sure. That's the idea, because kids can usually hear them. But
Mm,
this young man was 18, and I got a call from the mom saying he's been asleep now for about 18 to 20 hours. She goes, "I can't wake him, not for anything." I went, "I know that one. Okay." So I just remotely, I tapped in, and I said, "That kid better answer the door when I get there." And they were about 45 minutes away. We stopped off. I said, hit the pizza place. He's been asleep for a while. I want to make sure there's something there when he wakes up. So we picked up pizza, and I got there. He answered the door, and he was messed up. He goes, "Oh," like he could see, like it's not like he just got up. And
Yeah.
he's like, goes, "What day is it?" And I gave him the day, and he goes, "Why are you here?" I said, "I brought you pizza." Because thanks. Mom's like, Mom was just like, "What just happened?" you know. But yeah, it was like it was going on like 20 hours, between 18 and 20 hours that he had been
Why
down.
do they do that? Why do they make you sleep like that? What's up? What is it? Are they draining your energy?
Well, for sure. I think it's a bit of that, and it's just getting into like a maybe a possession state. I don't know. It's
Oh,
completely controlling the body, because I mean, he said afterwards, he goes, "I couldn't wake up." Because in my mind, I knew I couldn't move. Like I
oh,
just
how
couldn't.
scary!
I couldn't wake up. Well, yeah. I mean, when I experienced that with a little 4-year-old, it's not like he could, really vocalize
Right.
to me what it felt like. But this guy was old enough, and he says this is what it felt like. He goes, it was very strange. He goes, I just couldn't. He goes, I could hear my mom, but I could not. I could not wake up from it, like at all. He goes, but then all of a sudden I'm awake and you're at the door. And all I said, I tapped in. I said, I kid better answer the door when I get there. I swear to God, it will not be your day otherwise. I just went in, and again, I did a clearing again. It's just, but I was dealing with a family that had been, there was so much trauma in this family
Oh,
that even though I mean, even though she had all this trauma, and I'm sure she had dealt with attachments her whole life, and but she moved right into this one. And I know that just because of the actions, that the different things she told me about what happened in the home, and that one key instance where it happened to the people before, I went, now I know.
oh,
And that woman who died in the house was stuck. It held her there. When she passed, we moved her on.
oh, you did. I was just going to ask you that.
Mhm. Yeah, we just had to get rid of the problem child who was keeping her from moving on.
Did you ever run into a case where you just couldn't win? Like no matter what you did, you couldn't fight an attachment. It was just impossible. Or are they pretty much all successful at the end?
Um, I think in the end, not always just because of me, I think a lot of it has to do with the people who live there. There was one that was very difficult, and I backed away from it after we cleared everything. We drove off and realized there was a whole other section of the building that they never told us about. I was like, "Oh," But, I'll tell you though, probably, and this is the one that went after my family member.
Mm-hmm.
So, and the homeowners did not want us to come back. So it
Oh,
told me again, the oppression was really strong, and, there was a lot of death in the family. I mean, this thing was violent, and, so about, I don't know, 10 years, 15 years later, I had someone that I helped in that case who went on to have her own team. She's wonderful. And messaged me and said, things are still happening. I have suddenly, you know, come into my space has been this young man who's now a young man. And I went, perfect. And he's still having a lot of problems. I said, all I need is a picture, because he
wow.
didn't live there anymore. But all I needed to do was tap into that energy. So we removed his attachment, and we went back and cleared that house remotely.
That's
In
amazing.
in the end, it
Yeah.
took 15 freaking years, but we got it. Yeah. You evolve in your methods as well. And I think you end up with you just end up in situations that are, if luck will have it, you'll have it back. But not everything can be cleared. I mean, it depends on people. We can clear something, but when you have something, I've had people just say, no, I just like how this feels now. They want it back. So they'll bring in another, no problem.
That's great.
They can't get away from it. I had a woman writing a book who had something, and she was just like, okay, well, you just come and help me. She wanted to do a book about it. I said, no, I'm not playing into this. You're crazy. I'm not doing it. It's just every situation is different. I can't say to you right now, okay, to everybody, this is how it's going to work. It doesn't work that way. It works on an individual basis,
Oh yeah.
at least how I do things, because I'm not trying to undermine how anyone else does things. I just know what has worked for me. And it's about the people first, always. So if it's going to put somebody at risk, then it's just like, okay, no, you have to be so careful because, anybody that says, oh, these things can't hurt you. I don't know, man. If you get something that chucked across the room at you and knocks you in the head, or in this case, creates, and pushes a person. This man pushed his wife. He shoved her.
Oh
She
my God.
hit her head against a sharp object.
Yeah.
And he just laid her in the bed thinking, okay, well, I'll just let her sleep it off. She's just knocked out, and he put her in the bed. She never woke up, and then came back and saw that she was deceased, and they got him. That was it. And he's just, he has no recollection. So there are things. Human spirits can, I don't know that they have the same power behind any of that, obviously, but I mean, they can still influence, how you think. They can still be very much a part of your space as to
Yeah.
what you're thinking and where it takes you. I mean, they have frequencies that can do that. So,
Oh yeah. I
yeah.
don't think I've ever asked you this, but like you mentioned when you were in that tomb in Egypt and you weren't doing any of this type of work, and then 10 years later you were. Like,
Mhm.
what was the pivotal moment for you where you said, I have to do energy work to help others? Like, how did you get started doing that? Like,
Um,
thinking?
well, you know what? My kids were seeing things, and I never banked on the fact that they could, and they're very gifted in their own right. Um, and I switched a lot off. You can really switch on and off. It's really not hard once you figure it out. And then I started seeing how they were interacting, and I'm like, okay, I can't be oblivious to all this stuff.
Right.
And from that point, I just started, catching things again. And I think how my grandfather survived, like he died, my really intuitive grandfather died. I was probably 15, 16. And at that point, he was already teaching me a lot at that age, and I mean, I was getting stories, like dimensional stories from him when I was 4 or 5. Like
Wow.
it wasn't uncommon. And then before my uncle passed, I was already in the field, and we got talking, and he says, you sort of have to take the torch. He goes, all of us, those who do it seriously, we always seem to be more evolved. Like I'm more evolved than my father, goes, you're more evolved than I am. He said, but don't just stick to this. Like really move on and try to do other things. I've always involved myself in shadow work. I have never struggled with being able to help people because I help myself. And it was a slow process, but it was an effective process. And then, you just start meeting other people. I started meeting incredible people on my journey through this. And it was probably, I don't know, in the last 10 years especially, I started really venturing into different aspects of what my abilities, like to extend them outward. And
Yeah. Pushing your limits. You
yeah,
push. Yeah.
well, I think so. And um and I never like to, center out people, that I've worked with. That's up to them if they want to come forward and talk about what they've done. But I have worked with some incredibly gifted people, and I credit them all for their role in my life, because the type of work that I do is not for everyone. It's very dark, it's very heavy, um, and it over time it can take its toll. So I think that's why there's just a limited amount of people who can be very successful with it. But again, those who do it, because there's some amazing mediums out there who can do just about anything. This is really a drop in a hat. Energy is energy. But I did find that I prefer to do more planetary stuff. And it's
Mm,
not that, I don't like helping people. I do love to help people, but I am one person and I only have so many hours in a day.
yeah.
I have a very busy schedule. I do a lot of, I do media in different ways now, right? I help create, with documentaries or TV series and, put together shows and manage a network and do all this other stuff. And I also have family that I really value. So I like to be able to spend time with them. And I do not want to risk bringing harm forward right
Yeah.
now. And I
Yeah.
think a lot of that has to do with the state that the world is in right now. And because, I get tons of messages still. Some are easy to clear.
Bet.
I can look at some, I can just look at a message and kind of go, yeah, okay, this one's easy. And I can take care of it. But on an average now, I will stick to working with people and work on a planetary level because I just feel that there's a lot of this frequency and vibration that is causing a lot of harm to people, in turn creating the ripple effect of the people who message me after a while. And it's like, okay, so now let's just go for the grand scheme and work that and see if it lessens what's coming in, at the bottom on an individual level.
Yeah. When did the unified theory of like high strangeness, this, even the verbiage high strangeness, it's like new to me, that term.
Yeah. Well, high strangeness. I mean, John Keel gets the credit for that. People will know John Keel from the Mothman prophecies, talking about multiverses and such. And it's something I think that is stuck. It sure resonated with me. And I will use, what I resonate with because I realize just how much things are, how things really are the same. When you're getting into the similarities, for example, of what I call the crossover phenomenon. Let's use alien abduction, for example. So I think if you're looking at that, you're looking over, is it a crossover phenomenon? Are we dealing with a parallel universe? Because John Keel believed that we were,
Mm,
where certain creatures or cryptid beings were coming through a parallel world, and perhaps extraterrestrials were as well,
yeah.
right? So when you're starting to get into that, we will look at alien abduction or contact. It's not always, some people don't always look at it. It's not always an abduction. They don't always come into your room and pull you out. Sometimes, like there are relationships that are built, right? Not with everybody. I'm not, again, undermining what anybody goes through. I can only go by what my recollections, and I say recollections are of my own experiences. But people have reported foul smells such as sulfur.
Mm,
Yet in the demonic infestations, they'll say foul smells such as sulfur or foul, bright white lights, crackling sounds. That is also the same
yeah.
thing comes up in, the ET side of things. Sleep paralysis.
Oh, that's a big one.
It is because in the paranormal, they'll call it the hag syndrome, where you get this, the pushing on the chest, but it happens. I've had it happen to me twice in my life. And I'll tell you something, in both times, and this is where it gets weird, both times I was working um, with two different families from a really bad paranormal infestation.
Hmm.
But during that time, I was getting, about 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, at least every other night, sometimes every night. And I had a big 2-story house at the time, and the house would shake at night. It was a loud.
Oh,
So
jeez.
I'm thinking to myself, which is it? But this
Yeah.
is stuff you do not think about when it's happening. And I really didn't think about it until maybe 4 years ago. So when you factor in how long I've been in the field, which is just over, 2 decades, now I think back how much of my experiences, how many of my experiences may have been this crossover phenomenon where some of it was extraterrestrial as well as paranormal. Were they one of the same, or was I dealing with two different things? Because many people within the paranormal field will end up in, studying ufology and things like that and cryptozoology. And you start realizing dimensionally. It's all connected. All of it is.
It is, and I'll tell you, when I interviewed Nathaniel, I have to mention him again because he had his work had a profound effect on me.
Yeah.
It never dawned on me before
Yeah.
that all of this stuff could be demonic, and even UFOs, that they're tricksters and that they're tricking us, into thinking like, I'm watching Chris Bledsoe the other night. He's got the most amazing orb videos, and I'm thinking, is that like a demonic entity tricking them? So everybody is going, thank you, and like, when you listen to Nathaniel, it really makes you wonder, like,
he's very well researched.
yeah,
I have a lot of respect for Nathaniel. He's a good friend, and he takes chances as well. He works, and I know at least one of the people that he's working with right now in this very in-depth research, which they call the phenomenon. And there's quite a few shows that he's done on my YouTube channel, and a lot of what he says resonates because I've experienced both. But again, there's no real way of knowing. A lot of what he says makes a lot of sense. And then you have ufologists of people in that field going, no, not a chance, not a chance. But I mean, there's something to it because I know people who get in this kind of research. I've interviewed other people on the outer realm who are along the same lines within, the belief system of this. And it kind of takes me back to the, Gnosticism and the archons.
Yeah.
And archons never at any time having been part of this world. And the Gnostics knew it. They knew there was something more. They knew there was something more. And these are just things that feed. It's almost like, if you've ever seen an image of a human being standing there and you see this ethereal being coming through with their hands, just coming through them like this, it is very much like that. There are things that prompt you to do things. People are like, I can't believe the miserable day I've had. Like one thing has gone wrong, or one thing after another. But it's just like, yes, this is a thing. And this is what they do. This is an energy thing. They believe that that there's a hole, like this matrix, this grid around us, and it falls into, this is where you fall into things like the soul trap, like, boy, can you go off in so many different directions with all of this when you look at connections.
Yeah, it'll make you crazy because, like I said, I never really thought about, I mean, of course, there's always a demonic battle, but between good and evil, but it never dawned on me that could be a UFO thing as well. And it kind of freaked me out. That they're just tricking us into thinking that, and then I don't know, I would work through all different theories and then at some point you just have to give up and go, it is what it is. Like, I don't know what it is.
I know. Like, will we ever really have all the answers? I don't know that we will. I know that there are some really incredible people out in both fields or in all fields when you're dealing with the different levels, of high strangers. Some people get right into, Bigfoot research or cryptozoology in general. Some people get in, to ufology, extraterrestrial research. And then, some of them are just different levels of the paranormal. Do I believe everything is a demon? No. I mean, so for a long time, people, some people don't even believe that, there are angels and demons. They believe it's very much a religious thing, conditioning. I've heard, very gifted people say, and this is also my belief, that no, they're very much two different types of like apples and oranges. People might look at a demon and say, well, that's a reptilian. They might look at a light being and go, that's an angel. Anything is possible until we can actually get there and see for ourselves when we ourselves are within the ethereal realm. I'm sorry, I've got itchy nose. I don't think we can say unequivocally that this is how it is or this is how it is. For me, part of this entire journey is about learning it, experiencing it, learning it, and evolving because of it.
That's so well said and so true, and then you have to look at the religious aspect of things as well.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a whole nother ball of wax, because that's
Mm-hmm.
just faith driven.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially,
Mm-hmm.
it really is. So the spiritual realm is kind of faith driven. I don't know. I think people have more experiences in the spiritual realm. I would,
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Well,
It's so
religion
confusing.
plays a really big part in it because of the belief system, with ghosts and demons and fallen angels, and some people call the Watchers, some people call the Nephilim. I mean, you can go in many different examples, but I mean, I know that a friend of mine who used to be a minister for the born again Christian out
Mm,
in North Carolina, so they were pretty hardcore. And their belief was that there are no such thing as ghosts, but only demons, and they mimic the living, which is they're not far off. They do mimic the living.
yeah, they
There
do.
are things that turn around and can mimic your voice, mimic an appearance, makes you kind of wonder, well, doppelgangers, are we getting into the same idea here, But I mean, when you start getting into some of the old belief systems, there are so many. I always go back to Gnosticism because it is the earliest version of Christianity. Their beliefs were just, I think, much more evolved. They weren't, I mean, many of them were persecuted by the church because they just wouldn't give them money and fall into that
Yeah,
narrative,
exactly. Yep.
But I mean, this belief in archons, they were, these things they're really out there, they're rulers of different realms, different planets, different realms, and they are, I guess the best way of putting it would be to say the forces of anti-awakening.
Yeah.
They
And
just
it's
that's what
also
they hinder you from.
right. And it's also like with Chris Bledsoe, he takes spectacular videos of these orbs on
Yeah.
command. So why titillate him? Why not just land or have some greater extension of that visit, of that connection?
Mm.
It's just always the same, video after video of these orbs and orbs and orbs. And after a while, you're like, what's happening here? Like, what's the point of it all? Is it like, I don't, it's frustrating. The same thing with UFOs. You see videos and videos, and you don't
Mm.
know if it's fake or real, especially with AI today. You can't
You have to be
just,
careful about
yeah,
everything because of AI today. But I mean, they've been, with the technology, digital technology. I mean, people have been fudging things. I think you have to look at the source. Chris Bledsoe is very well respected. I
exactly.
think he's got better things to do with his time than be fudging videos, But I think it comes down to questioning what are what are is the energy source behind these orbs. I mean, if you come across something and you feel good about it, it's not making you feel anxious, you don't have any real reason to question it, then it's like, okay, I'll roll with it and I'll see. His experiences seem to be like really incredible.
They
But
are.
it,
He has hundreds of people on a beach too, and he does it,
yeah,
in front of so many people. It's
yeah,
incredible. And
yeah,
now he's got like kicked up cameras, and he's got like a lot
yeah.
better tech. But I'm wondering, what's the end game here? Like,
Mhm.
why are these orbs doing this? Why are they appearing to some people? Is it just that's the message? Just
It could
like,
just be awakening the masses on a different level. I mean, can you imagine if a full-blown extraterrestrial showed up on a beach? Some people might be, "Oh, wow." Other people might be kinda like, "Yeah, I don't think so."
yeah,
But when you have a ball of energy, this massive energy, it seems to be a simple way for people to resonate with it. Go, "That's kinda cool." But there are so many different, there's so many different levels of all of this. Look at the CE5s. People can call out to having extraterrestrial contact.
yeah.
I mean, you don't need to go through all those motions. they're not hard to call forward. But I think if you have a telepathic connection, then it works. And maybe this is exactly what's happening with Chris. Let's look at Whitley Strieber for a moment. I remember watching, I think it was Communion. It was an old
Yeah.
movie, right? And his experiences, he
Yeah.
started out terrified. I
Yeah.
watched the documentary where they were interviewing. It was terrifying, and over time you could just see like where he built this relationship.
Yeah.
And maybe it is just that. But we're also again, where we're at right now, we're at a level of awakening. But I think we need to awaken to everything. There are those of us who are slowly awakening. There are those of us who are highly awakened. There are those who are afraid to
Yes,
awaken.
big time.
They're in limbo. They're not paying attention to what's going on around them. Some of that has to do with the frequencies that are out there. I'm sure just missing. We are energy people, so you throw some frequencies out there and you look around your neighborhood and have a good look. Closer you are to some of these, some of the source, then you'll find maybe why you are reacting the way you're reacting. But when you have this on a mass global scale, and you ask yourself why some people are waking up more than others or faster than others,
Yeah.
just keep telling yourself that no, don't look at everything at face value. Always look between the lines, always look at what's really happening. It's not cut and dry. It's never been cut and dry. And sometimes there's this other world out there of your ancestors and other spirit beings and your guides who are just trying to say, look, snap out of this.
Yeah.
It's self-preservation. They're there to help you. And I
Absolutely.
think we stop paying attention. Maybe it's fear-based, maybe it's just energy-based on different levels. But I'll tell you, I've got voice recordings where I've asked questions, and I've had sometimes you just ask me just a generic question like, should I do this? Should I do this? And all of a sudden, like I've got all kinds of spirit family that comes through. It's like, no, 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 don't do that. Don't do that. Kind of like, oh, wow. Okay. Believe me, they're there rooting for you. Just pay attention.
Yeah.
Your family and your guides do not want to see, anything happen to you. They want to help you.
Is it safe to do EVPs, or is that again, reaching into the realm of attachment realm? Like,
Boy, I know for most paranormal researchers, the rule of thumb is don't research in your own home, your own space. Just
oh,
remember, doing an EVP is you're asking for communication. Whether you're using a recorder, whether you're using a ghost box, whether you're using a pendulum, a spirit board, Ouija board, phone app, if
any of
you
the
are extending an invitation to communicate, you are extending an invitation. So you better be darn careful about where you are. And this was a really good lesson because I worked with a woman who lost her husband. And she messaged me one day and she said, I have a message on my answering machine, because it was an answering machine back then. And she goes, and I'm very concerned about it. I'm like, okay. So I get there and she plays this recording, and it's a growly thing calling her an F and B. And she goes, I need to know if that's my husband. Like, I don't know. Did your husband like you? Because that's a bit concerning. Like, I mean, it's true. It's a no brainer to me.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. That's funny.
she ended up doing tons. She connected with somebody in the US, started doing tons and tons of voice recordings. I think because an attachment, something had come in and they were getting very interesting EVPs.
Yeah.
But she went into a really dark place. I said, it's one of those situations where I said, I have to walk away because you will not. Every time I get you every time I get you cleared, or every time we're in a good place, you go right back, right back, right back. And then the key for me was when she said to me, she goes, she wanted me to be involved in necromancing. She goes, I want you and I have a group of people to come together and bring my husband into the physical. I said, I'm not your guy. Sorry.
Oh,
That is where I draw the line right now. And I had to walk away. And it took about 3 years. And she finally got a hold of me and said, I was in a terrible place. You were right to walk away. I appreciate everything you tried to do for me. I always kept it in the back of my mind because I worked with her for almost a year. She goes, I kept everything in the back of my mind. And when I was able to pull myself out of it, I applied all of it. And I got myself out of it based on, what you had worked with me on. So I was grateful. It took a while, but it goes to show it starts with you and it ends with you as to
yeah.
what your outcome is going to be.
So no EVPs in the house.
It would be probably wise to not. Well, it's like making an invitation to something
Yeah,
invisible to come into your house and
yeah.
just like, I'm here. You invited me because I've gotten that. I was invited. I was just like, yes, you certainly were. That's how they trick the kids. It was hard with I have to get kids to reverse the invitation. So you have to think like a kid. I was like, did you ask your mom if he could come over to play? No. Did he ask his mom? Anyway, and he, but his mentality is going, looks at the thing and, I could see him look in the corner and he goes, no. I'm like, well, then I don't think he should be here and he needs to go home. You
Mm,
better go home and ask your mom. And the kid's just blasting this guy.
wow.
And then I looked at his mom and I went, no, you're in control. And she basically said, no, nobody comes over unless you ask me first. I said, he hasn't been home in a long time. His mommy's worried. I had to use that because I can't put fear in him, but he had to reverse that. Like for his mind, in mom's mind, to put them in control of the situation.
Are
So
the lot of, I mean, you worked in this medium for a long time. Are a lot of the EVPs we hear on, these jump scare TV shows, are they fake? Because I heard a lot of them were faked. Is that your experience? Or,
I can't speak for what they have. I mean, some people, you listen to some of the stuff I have, I'm being growled at. It's like constant. I've got incredible like human spirit EVPs. I can't say, I can only say for my own situations that I received recordings, did something come in, at every location I was at. And when you get some of the similar stuff that's at all different locations throughout the years, you have to think there's something to it. I can't speak for what everybody else does or, it's their experience, but I can tell you that I have been approached by people making documentaries and shows asking if I would supply EVPs, to which I have not. I have donated recordings in the past to people who were teaching EVPs to students and things like that. And I say students, I mean adult students don't want to do that. I've donated for things like that, but I don't donate them for television. Like I don't do it. I just like that stuff. I believe in bleed through and a bleed through when you have something coming through growling and malevolent and you put it out into the air, there's just a really strong belief that when that bleed through happens, that it affects people a certain way. And in doing that, it could invite something, I'm careful with things like that. I like to think I'm responsible. I'm not perfect. This is an evolutionary path for me as well. Things that I may have done 15 years ago, I would do differently now, right down to like I stopped filming because I just didn't want to portray it always being a certain way.
yeah.
So that's pretty much how
They like
that
all the
is.
demonic. They want everything to be scary and demonic, and
Yeah.
you that.
Well, when you ask me a question, where could this be? And I give you 5 plausible responses, but it could be this too, right? I suppose it could be. Can you say it? Well, I suppose I could say it because it is a viable option. It just got to be to a point where it's always the one that comes up and you realize that you're not being taken seriously and that all of the logical answers that you gave ends up on the cutting room floor because the money answer is the D word. So
Yeah.
and but that's ratings, they put a lot of money into these productions and in the end, they want profit on their returns, right? So they won't,
Yeah.
the way it
Absolutely.
goes. Yeah.
Yeah. And they
So
are enjoyable to watch. I mean,
they sell. See,
yeah,
it does the job.
exactly. It
But
does the job. Yeah.
yeah, but I mean, people have been shocked when they ask me questions and I come up with something entirely different. Oh, I'm honored though. I have to say, I've gotten so many emails through the years where people have just said, "We like how you explain things." Well, I do my best in everything to just say blah 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 blah, but they don't realize in my blah 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 that I've just spent, like a minute saying or 30 seconds saying that there's another five just like it with different answers, So it is what it is. You get labeled and it's very difficult because there's just, you're not taken seriously. And yet I have so many lists of people who have just said, wow, thank you for the help that you've given. But in the help that I give, it's really an educational journey for all involved, myself included.
Oh, yeah. And then you've got the whole cryptid thing too, which is a
Mhm.
whole nother like genre
Yeah.
inside of the high strangeness
Mhm.
world.
Mhm.
That's mind blowing as well. Do you think any of these cryptids could attach or possess, or are they just out there to scare the bejeebus out of you? Like what?
I think, there's many different theories behind that. I mean, some people believe that they are, dimensional or multidimensional, that they can come through portals, or there could be again like just a crossover. It really is a very fine line, I think, if of coming between dimensions. We live in one, it's like layers. You can only listen to one radio station at a time. I think it's kind of like that, but yet, I mean, incredible people can hear dimensional stuff. But I mean, are they here to just scare us? I don't know that it's about scaring us. I think when you're looking at Bigfoot, we don't know that they weren't always here. There's so many places on this planet where they could be hiding. But there have been whistleblowers that have come forward and said no, they've seen them, in underground bases. Well, Mount
Right.
St. Helens went, they saw military taking them out there. They know they're there. There's a lot of crossover connections without a doubt. When you look at something, for example, like the Loch Ness Monster, they swear up and down, there's no way the Loch can sustain an animal this big. Okay, well then let's look at a theory of maybe portal.
Oh,
Is there
yeah.
something where they could come in and out, here and there? It's just a theory. Can they just kind of pop in? I mean, there's a lot more. This planet is a pretty incredible place. And it's
Mhm.
not the only place within this solar system or universe or galaxies, like we just don't know how they all, how they all get here.
I know, and sometimes when you just stop and think about the whole bundle of everything that falls under the high strangeness genre,
Mhm. Mhm.
it's crazy. Like, are we imagining all this? What do you call that? Like the thin man, not
Oh,
a third,
Slender Man, like a tulpa. Yeah.
right,
And
right,
Santa's, I mean, you think
a
about it. Well, we have a version of the Coca-Cola Santa that's
right,
a creation that is
yeah,
so fixated upon. There are people who just research the Santa phenomenon, and he shows up as a Coca-Cola Santa, like
yeah.
that image. And sometimes he's not very kind. He's
No,
not so kind and jolly, but it goes to show you we have that power to create and manifest things. I mean, people can
I'm
manifest
asking.
their own realities and others.
Do you think this is all a tulpa? Like, are we just imagine? Did we bring all this stuff into existence through our own imaginations and energies? Do you think?
Maybe we're just in a matrix and it was created with us. Maybe we're on like like a total jail planet. Things are just being dumped here. Maybe we're just a dumping ground. Who knows? But
Are.
but maybe it is just a really incredible place with doorways that come through. Maybe, things have longevity and have just been here for a really long time, or are so well hidden. Like there was just an article that came out recently right out of the Congo where somebody got a picture. I think it was just like of like a brontosaurus type. I know I'm saying it wrong, but what we
Saw
would know as a brontosaurus. Yeah, So
that.
I'm thinking there are places here that they're either coming in from somewhere or they have managed to be undetected all this time. But just
Uh,
remember, if this is energy based, and I can leave it here, there are a lot of powers that be out there right now with patents and technology to affect
yes,
frequency, vibration, how we perceive things, right down to the technology in your own home.
absolutely. And
So
we talked about that before.
we have, and we'll probably talk about it again on Beyond the Outer Realm on Tuesday. So just saying, we
Love
are
it.
energy, which
Yeah,
means we can be manipulated. Energy can be manipulated, and we are essentially energy, right?
I love that. That's a perfect way to close this conversation too, I think.
Hmm.
Michelle, I always tell you this, but I could talk to you for hours. I
Yeah, thanks. Ditto.
just
Yeah.
blessing. That's all I'm going to
Glad
say.
you enjoyed.
You're just such a blessing to the universe. And
Thank you. Thank
you
you.
are. Love you
Yeah, thank you.
dearly. Thank you so much for today. And thank you,
Welcome.
everybody in the chat. I love seeing all the questions and comments coming through. It's so exciting. Thank you all so much in the chat for your love and support. And don't forget, who's on your show tomorrow night? No,
Tonight, you mean John Semple, and we're talking about sky people and different things he's encountered in his travels, and it's going to be really wild. And he's one of my he's a filmmaker. You guys will definitely know him when you see him, but he's been on before. But this is going to be a really great conversation.
oh, and that's at 9 o'clock, right? I'm gonna have to wake up and make sure I catch that because when I shared the banner and I saw Sky People, it just hit me. I'm like, what is this about? Is this about UFOs, ETs? Like, is that
Yeah.
the
Well, the different how the sky people, the similarities throughout many ancient cultures and indigenous communities, and the
oh, right.
similarities with everything. It's interesting. It's super interesting.
Oh, I'd love to have him on my show too someday.
Yeah,
That would
he's
be awesome.
great. He's great. I can arrange that.
Oh, I know. I know you can. I
Yeah.
know you can. Well, thank you again so much, Michelle. Love you dearly.
Love you too.
I'll
Bye-bye.
see you soon. Thank you, dear.
Okay, bye-bye.
Well, thank you everyone so much. This show was incredible and so much fun. And Michelle always brings the most amazing perspectives in to every topic that has to do with high strangeness. So thank you so much. You've been listening to Ethereal Encounters Unveiled on United Public Radio Network and the UFO Paranormal Radio Network, which is 105.3. I think I say this at sleep in my dreams at night sometimes. I swear I hear this in my head. But anyway, 105.3 on the Gulf Coast and 107.7 FM in beautiful New Orleans. Please support all of our other hosts. We have so many people on this network now, and I would need an hour to be able to say their names and give them a tout. But please do support as many folks as you can on this network, including Ethereal Encounters Unveiled. Please give us a thumbs up and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I would be ever so grateful. I'm surprised Oliver. Oh, the reason why Oliver's not here to say goodbye is because my daughter just took him for a walk. But anyway, thank you all. Love you all so much. God bless. Stay well. See you soon. Don't forget tomorrow at 3. I have on a very interesting guest. I almost forgot to mention this. Adam Finnegan is on, and we're talking about America's silent epidemic, chronic disease revealed. And it's a good one. It's a good one. So please tune in tomorrow. Thank you all so much. Take care. God bless. Goodbye.